Development Bank Group, and the Pan-African Farmers Organization. Our conference title and our mission are one and the same thing. This is a working conference, but I want to check I've got the right attendees in the room. If you consider yourself a thought leader in the agricultural space, please raise your hand. Everybody else who didn't raise their hand, please raise their hands. I have elevated you to thought leaders. We have a room full of thought leaders, and we need you because there are 4 pillars, 4 themes that we will be delving into over the next 2 days. The landscaping for farmers, smallholder farmers across Africa. What does the landscaping look like? We're beginning showcasing ideas and initiatives. We will also be learning and finally inspiring. That is a note to all of the panelists, all of the speakers, and all of the audience as well. This is a very practical conference. My name is Femi Oke. I am one of your conference moderators. The other conference moderator is Yvonne Dege, who you will meet later on this morning. You should consider us the hello tractors of moderating, because we go around the world and we make important conversations like this happen. So we are going to start with a video that shows us what the need is, how much support smallholder farmers need. Take a look at the screen.
They wake before the sun, and their hands meet the earth. These hands are feeding nations, from seed to harvest, from market to table. The hands of Africa's smallholder farmers, these hands contribute to 70% of the continent's food production and provide incomes for millions of rural households. Despite the vital role smallholder farmers play in Africa's food systems, few have access to finance to improve their outputs or grow into a viable agribusiness. Many struggle to put food on their own tables. The African Development Bank Group, through its Civil Society Engagement Action Plan, is developing the business case to invest in Africa's smallholder farmers, working with partners on how to attract financing to help smallholder farmers do more than grow food.
At the initial stage was actually to acquire a motor vehicle. I'd visited about 3 banks. I was turned down, and it's quite frustrating for a small business that is trying to grow, that is creating employment, and all I need is finance to scale it up to the next level.
With the right investment, smallholder farmers can transform food systems, be resilient to shocks, pivot their business models in response to crises, innovate, and generate economic opportunities in rural and urban areas.
So when I got the financing, it was a game changer for me. I was able to reach many more farmers, and that actually meant more beehives, more honey production, and other hive products.
With over 60% of sub-Saharan Africa dependent on agriculture and a population expected to double by 2050, sustaining and adapting smallholders' farms is crucial to food security, employment, and prosperity.
In the past, productivity of the land was very low due to the flooding of the river. It was very hard to make a living being a farmer with 9 children. But this year, I'm very excited about the wheat crop. I expect a yield of 4.5 to 5 tons per hectare.
Concrete actions must take place to create sustainable financing models and give smallholder farmers the tools they need to thrive. Let's join our hands and minds to develop creative solutions and new responses for a resilient and sustainable agriculture in Africa.
Beth Dunford is the Vice President for Agriculture, Human and Social Development at the African Development Bank. Beth, it's so good to have you at your own conference as co-host. You're welcome to the lectern.
Good morning, Your Excellencies, honorable ministers, distinguished guests, development partners. Good morning, distinguished representatives of government and the private sector. Importantly, smallholder farmers, all protocols observed. Karibu and welcome to our high-level conference on scaling finance for smallholder farmers in Africa. And I extend my gratitude of the African Development Bank Group to host with the government of Kenya as well as the Pan-African Farmers Organization, who are co-organizers of this conference. We thank you for your collaboration and importantly, your inspiration to create 2 days of conferencing that we are determined to be a success. My appreciation also goes to our esteemed partners. Your participation alone demonstrates commitment to a bold vision for financing Africa's smallholder farmers. We gather today in recognition of a fundamental truth. Africa cannot feed itself without its smallholder farmers. Smallholder farmers and small and medium enterprises supply 80% of the food produced and processed in Africa. At the same time, Africa's smallholder farmers are often the most vulnerable to the impacts of climate change and market failures. Africa's smallholder farmers are the foundation of rural economies, yet they face significant obstacles to access finance. For some of you joining today, these numbers may sound familiar. For the rest of us, they should be very frustrating to hear. Currently, only 6% of African smallholder farmers can access credit, and less than 20% of Africa's smallholder farmers use improved seed. Africa's smallholder farmers face a staggering $75 billion of financing gap per year, meaning that's the amount of investment that they cannot afford, investment needed for equipment, tools, inputs, services, the very basics they need to be productive and resilient. So, ladies and gentlemen, excellencies, we can help change this reality, and that is why we are here today. I am thrilled that the African Development Bank, under our Feed Africa strategy, has invested more than $10 billion in agriculture since 2016. Through the bank's Africa Emergency Food Production Facility, this was our response to the disruption of food supplies arising from the Russian-Ukraine war. We have provided 12 million farmers with improved seeds and fertilizers, and this action led to an additional 35.6 million metric tons of food produced on this continent. So these are a few examples of how the bank is walking the talk to help Africa's smallholder farmers. Today we've teamed up, like we said, with the government of Kenya and the Pan-African Farmers Organizations to explore ideas that move beyond emergency responses. So we're looking to see today how to galvanize support to deliver sustainable financing to Africa's smallholder farmers. Your Excellencies, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, providing smallholder farmers with access to credit is essential to unlocking long-term gains in farmer productivity and incomes. And this conference is designed to help us ensure that we all go home with actionable plans to deliver full-scale programs that drive impact for these vital communities. So some steps to help us get started. We need to pursue innovative financing models to de-risk through risk-sharing facilities, blended finance, and other services. One example from Zambia, our African Emergency Food Production Facility established a risk-sharing facility that enables commercial banks to lend directly to smallholder farmers. So let's look at technology to welcome more of Africa's smallholder farmers into the agri-tech age. Digital programs like Hello Tractor and Apollo Agriculture are revolutionizing smallholder financing by leveraging digital payments and other services. The bank is thrilled with our new partnership with MasterCard called the Mobilizing Access to the Digital Economy Alliance, or MADE Alliance Africa. So this collaboration with MasterCard and its Community Pass program will in part boost adaptation of agriculture technologies and improve smallholder farmer incomes. So let's embrace The public-private partnerships government must enable, the private sector to lead. The Better Life Farming Alliance for Africa is already supporting some 700,000 African farmers, and that's proof that these partnerships work. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, this conference is not for 2 days of talking. It is about action. And what we need to do is first to identify models that we know work to provide access to finance for smallholder farmers. So we know what models work. We're going to be talking about them today, and we need to figure out a plan to scale these across the continent. Identify models that work. Secondly, we would like to see strong government commitment to dedicating resources from national budgets, from places like the African Development Bank country allocations, to dedicating these resources to de-risking commercial bank lending to smallholder farmers. We're asking for that commitment here in the next 2 days. And third, we at the African Development Bank are committed to work with our board and our partners here to do all we can to mobilize resources to de-risk lending from our own bank's balance sheet to scale up access to smallholder farmers. So over the next 2 days, I'm asking all of you here, every time you leave a conference room, leave with a deal or a partnership or a new financial commitment that could transform a smallholder farmer's life. The African Development Bank, we are ready to work with you all to drive this transformation. Together, we will finance the future of African agriculture. Together, we can feed Africa. Thank you, and Asante Sana.
Our conference will be conducted and interpreted in 3 languages. English is channel 1, French is channel 2, and Portuguese is channel 3. Our opening remarks will continue in French. Ibrahim Koulibaly is president of the Pan-African Farmers Organization. Thank you for joining us. Good morning.
Merci beaucoup, Madame la modératrice, pour la parole. Je voudrais d'abord commencer par remercier sincèrement les autorités du Kenya qui ont bien voulu accepter d'abriter cette première rencontre de haut niveau dédiée au financement des petits producteurs. Je voudrais remercier le président et toutes les autorités de direction de la Banque africaine de développement, notre banque continentale qui a fait toutes ses preuves dans le financement du développement de notre cher continent, l'Afrique. Remercier, mesdames et messieurs les ministres qui ont bien voulu venir à notre écoute au cours de cette réunion. Remercier tous les participants, mes collègues paysans, fermiers, ici présents dans la salle. Mesdames et messieurs, notre émotion est grande ce matin de prendre la parole devant cette auguste assemblée au nom de 65% de la population de notre continent, qui sont les petits producteurs agricoles. Nous voulons certainement saluer les immenses efforts déployés par toutes les parties prenantes à cette question complexe du financement du secteur agricole et rural en Afrique. Mais rappelez, comme cela a été dit par Madame la vice-présidente avant moi, que seulement 6% des agriculteurs africains ont accès à un financement bancaire. Pourtant, 80% des aliments consommés en Afrique sont produits par ces petits producteurs. 60 à 70% des emplois directs et indirects sont créés par ces petits producteurs. Et cette agriculture contribue à hauteur de 15 à 40% du produit intérieur brut selon les pays. 95% d'entre nous dépendent uniquement de la pluviométrie pour leur activité agricole, dans un contexte connu de dérèglement climatique. Face à cela, l'Afrique est le continent qui dispose de 60% des terres arables totales du monde. L'Afrique est le continent qui a la population la plus jeune. L'Afrique est le continent qui dispose de ressources en eau abondantes et près d'un marché d'1 milliard de consommateurs. Investir dans ce potentiel n'est pas simplement une question liée à l'intérêt des personnes vivant en milieu rural. C'est une question de vie ou de mort pour l'Afrique. La situation actuelle n'est plus tenable, mesdames et messieurs. 20 ans après avoir pris un engagement politique fort d'investir dans l'agriculture à Maputo, Malabo et dernièrement Kampala, force est de reconnaître que les solutions tardent à se mettre en place. Il est temps, donc, de se retrouver, de discuter, de co-construire afin de répartir à l'action. Si nous voulons sauver notre continent, notre cher continent, de la faim, de la malnutrition, de la pauvreté, des conflits qui deviennent de plus en plus violents et récurrents dans la plupart de nos pays, la seule solution réside à la création d'emplois par millions dans le secteur agricole. Il n'y a pas un autre secteur qui est capable de faire cela. Il n'y en a pas d'autre. Donc nous n'avons pas d'autre option que de trouver les vraies solutions, les vraies innovations, afin de mettre derrière nous cette phase d'accès très faible de l'ensemble des petits producteurs au système de financement, à un système de financement durable. Mesdames et messieurs, nous voulons encore une fois de plus remercier les autorités de la Banque africaine de développement, une institution qui a fait la preuve de sa solidité, de sa crédibilité et de son innovation, et qui, depuis un certain temps, s'est mis à l'écoute des autres acteurs, non seulement étatiques, en créant un département spécifiquement dédié à l'écoute des acteurs non étatiques. Et c'est par ce biais qu'à travers le financement, à travers le partenariat solide que nous avons construit, que notre cri de cœur a été entendu par les autorités de la BAD, qu'ils en soient remerciés. En créant cette opportunité, nous ne doutons pas que nous ne sommes pas en train de faire une conférence de plus, mais nous sommes en train de mettre les graines, semer les graines dans une image qui est propre aux paysans, semer les graines qui vont bientôt germer pour donner les solutions crédibles, durables et fonctionnelles sur un financement accessible au plus grand nombre des petits producteurs. D'autres continents ont trouvé des solutions. Il n'y a pas de raison que l'Afrique, à son tour, n'arrive pas à trouver les solutions qu'il faut. Et pour cela, ce dont nous avons besoin, c'est simplement plus d'écoute, plus d'inclusion, plus d'innovation, j'allais dire plus d'audace de la part de l'ensemble des acteurs. Et j'ose espérer qu'ensemble, nous allons créer les conditions de cette audace nouvelle et régler définitivement ce problème. En souhaitant plein succès aux travaux de cette conférence, je vous remercie, mesdames et messieurs.
Our keynote comes from James Mwangi, Chief Executive Officer and Managing Director of the Equity Group. I do not know how audacious his keynote will be, but he has been given that challenge. Welcome.
Thank you very much for this opportunity. Your Excellencies, Honorable Ministers, Africa Development Bank, and your partners, it's a real privilege and an honor for me to start before you with that challenge articulated as you have had. But I think the challenge was even raised higher by the Reudo, who spoke eloquently on the clip we saw of how frustrated she was as a small-scale farmer, and then the relief that she called a game changer when she got financing. So essentially the question is, how do we make it to happen to all small-scale farmers? Lack of finance to them is frustration, and access to finance is a game changer. I guess I was picked on to speak on behalf of accessing finance to small-scale farmers because I'm born and brought up in a small-scale farm. And so I understand this subject very well. And those who know, Equity is home to small-scale farmers. So we really have an idea. But I think mine is to really make a call for FIA's urgency of now, closing the gap of African small-scale holder farmers. And when we say now, honorable guests, distinguished colleagues, Made Alliance partners, ladies and gentlemen, now is now. The small-scale farmer, if we contextualize, is set up to produce 70% of the food needs or the agricultural needs of the continent. The small-scale farmer competes for inputs at the same price with large-scale farmers, competes with the commercial farmers for inputs. But they are competing when the small-scale farmers' productivity is an eighth, and at best, a sixth of the productivity of a large-scale commercial farmer. And that is the paradox we need to resolve. You can talk about financing and everything else. Unless we solve that fundamental issue, that the small-scale farmer competes in the same market with the commercial farmer for inputs, fertilizers, seeds, and the market price is the same, but their production is an eighth. And that tells you the economics of why financing to the small-scale farmer has failed. So the issue before us is larger than financing. To me, Honorable Minister, because it is good to address myself to the Minister of Agriculture in Kenya, the solution lies at putting the small-scale farmer at par with the large-scale farmer, with the commercial farmer, in terms of productivity. So the real game changer is how do we increase the productivity of the small-scale farmers. How do we increase? If large-scale farmers and commercial farmers are getting finance, we have not sat here to address their needs. They don't need to be addressed in a conference. Banks are financing them. The only difference between the small-scale farmers and the large-scale farmers is the equation of economics. That if I get an eighth from the market, from what my competitor is getting, then I start out as a risky actor. So, Honorable Minister, we are talking about the risk of production. Why is the productivity of the small-scale farmer so low that it's perceived as a risk by financiers? Financiers don't avoid and don't see the credit risk of the small-scale farmer. They see the production risk. And that is what is between the small-scale farmer and access to finance. And until we confront that construct, next year, Africa Development Bank will call another conference, and we shall talk, like we have been talking for the last 30 years. We'll keep on talking, because we are not addressing the real issue. The real issue is the failure of the market for the small-scale farmer. And they fail because the small-scale farmer is confronted with the challenges that make them uncompetitive in the marketplace. Finance operates in a marketplace, a competitive marketplace. And that's why commercial farmers, large-scale farmers don't have a problem of finance. But the farmer who buys the fertilizer at the same price with the large-scale farmer, buys the seeds at the same, sells the same price in the marketplace, is producing an eighth. So when you look at the equation of revenue and cost, they always end up at a loss. And if you're adding your operations at a loss, there is nobody to back you, because anybody who backs you, you share losses. You don't share profits. The small-scale farmer must be made profitable, and must be only made profitable by increasing their productivity. And I have a few suggestions on how maybe to deal with this. And maybe, Honorable Minister, I want again to speak about the role of government. And the biggest role the government can play is to address the weak agricultural advisory and extension services. If the government addresses that, then the capacity, the competence of the small-scale farmer will be significantly elevated. They will understand, and their productivity can grow up, can increase, let's say 2 times, so that the gap is no longer 8, but 4 times. We have increased productivity 4 times using capacity building. The biggest de-risking mechanism of the scale farmer is capacity, because he becomes the agent of transforming agriculture, but a capacitated agent. The second one, let me address myself just before I leave you, Honorable Minister. We think you can do also more on issue of policy. Well, the biggest problem is that, and Honorable Minister, I will be very honest, I hope I will not lose your friendship. Governments have always treated small-scale farming as a social sector. Honorable Minister, small-scale farming is a commercial sector. It competes with the large-scale and the commercial farmers. We must put in place policies that provides public infrastructure to small-scale farmers. Farmers cannot afford public, what one you could call agricultural infrastructure on their own. Large-scale farmers, large commercial farmers can afford. Me and you come from a region where we used cooperatives to provide infrastructure to small-scale farmers, collectively owned. The cooperative movement needs to be put in place, particularly the production infrastructure that supports the farmer. Ideally, that can be done by policy, but policy is not enough. For us with vehicles, government provides us with public infrastructure called roads. For those who fly, government provides us with infrastructure that it calls airports. For those who ship, government provides them with a public infrastructure called ports. What infrastructure does government provide the small-scale farmers? As a public infrastructure, as a public good. For the Gen Zs, you have provided internet infrastructure. That question has never been answered. I hope, Beth, this is not the last time you'll invite me to address your conferences. But it so be it, I think we have to confront this issue. We are not investing adequately to the people we are relying to produce 70%. We invest in everybody else other than small-scale farmer. Public infrastructure, and these may be markets, may be irrigation programs, and anything that facilitates the farmer. There is a case that can be made. I think lastly, Honorable Minister, is policies that makes markets work. At the moment, markets don't ask for small-scale farmers. Price volatility and post-harvest losses are the biggest challenges to the small-scale farmer. Those issues can be dealt at policy level and public infrastructure to support small-scale farmers. And hopefully, Honorable Minister, we can also extend market information gaps and unfair trading systems can be dealt with the policy. I think there is nobody who is extracted from than the small-scale farmer. Whether it's the broker, that's where there is the largest number of intermediaries and brokers, all extracting. We need to mainstream this. But I think it's not just about government. I think the development partners who have been in this space for the last, since 1947, but we haven't cracked it. What is really missing? I think really what is missing is development partners thinking they can do it on a standalone silo style. I think you have enormous finance, but that finance might be very, very effective if you made it blended finance, not standalone finance. There's enough providers of finance. Donor, development partners finance would serve enormously if it became blended finance. If it becomes blended finance, it will stop distorting markets and it start making markets. It will be a facilitator. It will be a proof of concept, and it will be used to de-risk the rest of the finances and support government in fulfilling its mandate. Then have no choice but then to come to the financial institutions. And I left it last because that's where I am. I think we in the banking industry or financial systems, we must address inadequate financing mechanisms. They're inadequate. What we have today doesn't address. But truly, with all the honesty, We can't do it alone. We need to sit all together. Those who are giving us breaded finance support us. Those who are de-risking the farmers do the de-risking, and together we can co-create. This will require co-creating if we have to have adequate mechanisms of financing small-scale farmers. The amount of finance is limited. We say most of the economies, including the Kenyan economy, more than 30% of our GDP comes from agriculture. But if you look at the financial sector, we only carry 3% of our balance sheet in agriculture. There is disparity. Agriculture doesn't get a commensurate funding. And we need to move financial sector balance sheets from 3% to 30% being dedicated to agriculture. That is when agriculture will get sufficient commensurate funding to its contribution to GDP. But we can do better if we can reach 40, because when you look at occupation, agriculture provides livelihoods to about 70% of the population, but it gets 3. We decided to confront this situation 5 years ago as Equity and said, we'll set an incredible target that by 2030, 30% of our lending must be in agriculture. It looked audacious, it looked impossible, but we were deliberate and intentional. And we said we will not do this in conferences, we'll do this in the farms. Honorable Minister, the just finished audit confirmed 16% of all our lending is now in agriculture. So it can be done. But it has been done because of partnership. And allow me to take 1 minute. The first biggest partnership we had was with AGRA. And it all started when President Adesina was the president of AGRA. And Honorable Minister, you know Kilimo Biashara. It's now the biggest driver of agriculture in Kenya as financing. We partners with the 3 Rome-based UN agencies, IFAD, FAO, and truly today, all their programs are with Equity. They have helped to de-risk, and so we are able to be bold and courageous. But the biggest partnership came from MasterCard Foundation, who said, here is the money. Train all the farmers that you are leading, and we shall also share the credit risk. And they took 40% of our credit risk. And that is how we became very, very bold. Our next step is to approach the problem have been solved. So Beth, I'm headed to Africa Development Bank. Propaco has come on board, KFW has come on board. KFW, their partnership, we have rolled 20 irrigation schemes. 20 irrigation schemes for small-scale farmers, and that is very transformational. So these things can be done, and that's how we have built the balance sheet, through irrigation schemes and transformational projects. So what I'm saying, it can be done. It should be really done. But there is one problem we have to handle together, and I have no solution, but I know it needs to be handled. The issue of climate change and external shocks. The biggest threat to small-scale farmers is not finance, it's climate change. We have watched it. The reason why we have gone to irrigation is we have realized rain-fed reliant agriculture seems to be something of the past. Before I woke up from the seat, we were talking with the minister about rains. We got rain 2 weeks ago and farmers planted. And then suddenly rain disappeared until last night. And the question is, If the seeds had germinated, after that rain, the farmers have to plant again. That, to me, is the vagaries of climate change. The droughts, the storms that we are seeing is not a risk, not a shock that small-scale farmers can deal with. We have together find a solution of mitigation and adaptation. I want to thank Beth, using your forum, IFC. IFC chose to support equity together with IFAD. And today, last year, we were named the bank with the largest number of loans and mitigation and adaptation scheme in the entire world. So what we're saying is that this thing will require a lot of partnerships and collaborations. And I'm really glad that Africa Development Bank and your partners, Government of Kenya, the Farmers Association, you have pulled us together. The new leadership that will deliver for small-scale farmers is partnerships and collaborations. Let me add, ladies and gentlemen, by saying we can't afford to wait. The time for incremental change has passed. We have the solutions, and we have seen proven models that work. What we need now is scale, is speed, and strategic collaboration between the public and the private and civil society. Governments must create enabling policies that provide financial incentives, risk-sharing mechanism, and investment in rural infrastructure. Financial institutions must design innovative lending models tailored to small-scale farmers, leveraging fintech businesses, must integrate farmers into structural value chains, offering them access to finance, inputs, and guaranteed markets. Development partners must prioritize blended finance mechanisms that de-risk agriculture, investments, and attract private sector participation. Technology providers must continue to develop and scale digital solutions that enhance access to finance, market data, climate-smart practices. We must act now, not tomorrow, not even next year, but just now. If we commit to be bold, immediate action, we can transform smallholder farmers from a struggle for survival into a driver of prosperity. Addressing these challenges requires a multi-stakeholder approach that brings together governments, financial institutions, agribusinesses, development organizations, technology providers in order to scale affordable financing models tailored to small-scale needs, strengthen input supply chains and access to quality farm inputs, expand digital extension services and real-time market data platforms, develop a climate-smart agricultural programs to enhance resilience and improve rural infrastructure and storage facilities to reduce post-harvest losses. Working together, we can ensure that Africa does not just feed itself, but it feeds the world. The time is now. The solution exists. Let's make it happen together. Thank you, Africa Development Bank, for bringing us together.
Our final co-host is the Republic of Kenya. Senator Mutahi Kagwe is the Cabinet Secretary for Agriculture and Livestock Development for the Republic of Kenya. Thank you for hosting us.
Thank you very much. I want to start by confirming to my brother, Vince Mwangi, that he is still my friend. So, Madam Beth Danford, Vice President of the African Development Bank, fellow ministers of Agriculture and Rural Development, governors of the African Development Bank, Mr. Coulibaly, the CEO of Pan-African Farmers Organization, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, may I wish you a good morning, and please accept my very warm welcome to Kenya. I hope that after this conference, you'll afford yourselves a few days, at least I know I convinced my brother from Nigeria, a few days to enjoy the diverse range of tourism Kenya offers, whether it's wildlife safaris in the national parks, a quick trip to our beach, or some delightful bird watching in Rift Valley Lakes region. Since we are gathered here to discuss agriculture and our small-scale farmers, you may also wish to indulge in some small farm tourism so that you can witness for yourselves what our local tea and coffee farmers experience from planting to processing, or what our flower farmers go through in order to beautify the world with Kenyan roses. For now, it's my great honor to address you today on a matter that is important to me as an individual. As James Mwangi says, we come from a background of small-scale farming, and most importantly, to its long-term sustainability, the need for practical, repeat, practical and inclusive financing solutions for agriculture. As we are all each aware, agriculture remains, and it has been said here, the backbone of our continent, providing the livelihoods of our people, over 60% of the African's population, and contributing significantly to GDP. Yet, despite its importance, and the fact that agriculture is one of the most widely discussed topics, our small-scale farmers, the very people who feed our nations, continue to struggle with accessing the financial resources needed to grow and sustain their enterprise. Today, we convene compliments of the African Development Bank. Thank you very, very much. And on platform, whom I would like to graciously thank. We have the unique opportunity to place the farmer at the focal point of our deliberations, and crucially, transition these discussions from high-level interrogations of food security, food dependence, nutrition, subsidies, and financing into tangible, impacting deliverables for the farmer. In short, what does the farmer, the one we are discussing here, need in order to feel empowered and capacitated? In my discussions with them, with the farmers, the fundamentals are really simple. And what they have been telling me is that you are talking in very sophisticated manner in a very towards a very simple subject. The biggest handle farmers face is limited access to affordable credit due to lack of collateral, credit histories, and financial literacy. As a result, they rely on high interest informal lending or inadequate government subsidies, preventing them from accessing essentials like fertilizers, high-yield seeds, and modern agricultural inputs. Climate change, as the previous speaker said, further exacerbates these challenges, keeping millions trapped in poverty and limiting Africa's agricultural potential. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, if we are to build a resilient and sustainable Africa, we must recalibrate agricultural financing to directly address these core farmer challenges. Agriculture is more than a food source. It's a driver of economic growth, job creation, and food security. And it is anchored by smallholder farmers. This matter is not that complicated. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, should we invest in the farmer by ensuring that they have technical support on soil analysis, financing labs, financing soil analysis capacity? We will enable our farmers to understand their soil nutrients composition, pH levels, and potential disease risks. In doing so, they will be capacitated to apply the right soil treatments to improve crop yields, increase long-term soil health and sustainability, and improve resilience to pests and climate-related challenges. Similarly, if we invest in fertilizer access, fertilizer companies, fertilizer blenders, etc., for African farmers, not just as a moral obligation, but as a strategic economic opportunity, we will realize far-reaching benefits that developed economies we are competing with have achieved. Studies show that every dollar invested in fertilizer generates multiple returns in farm productivity, rural incomes, and economic growth. And in Africa, we are consuming per unit 25% what our competitors are consuming. By funding fertilizer accessibility, we will drive sustainable agricultural transformation, helping millions of farmers transition from subsistence farming to commercial viability. Practical things. When it comes to cold chain facilities, we should realize that through a simple task, such an investment should be a game changer for Africa's agricultural sector, realizing, of course, that 40% of food produced in Africa is lost post-harvest due to inadequate storage and transportation infrastructure. And I agree with James Mwangi that governments must invest more in this area. Cold chain investments will not only reduce food waste, but also extend the shelf life of perishable goods, open new markets for farmers, and increase overall food supply stability. This is even more compelling when praised with the context of the growing demand for fresh produce and dairy, both locally and internationally. Ladies and gentlemen, with a focus on these basic thematic areas, we will promote industrialization such as agribusiness, agro-processing industries, and create therein new markets and new jobs that our youthful population so desperately needs. By extension, stronger value chains bode well for the strengthening of our regional economic blocs, and they catalyze the aspirations of the African continent free trade area. Ladies and gentlemen, everything I've said is within reach because we have the capacity to recalibrate our financing models into sustainable solutions that are simple and readily deployable. Our African banks have the capacity to develop tailored financial products by innovating beyond traditional loan structures and creating flexible, low-interest credit products designed for smallholder farmers. With retro effort, they can create input financing, warehouse receipt systems, and value chain financing models. Our banks can also expand risk mitigation tools by encouraging agriculture-specific insurance schemes and guarantee funds that reduce lending risks for both banks and farmers, ensuring that adverse climate conditions or price fluctuations do not lead to financial ruin. When it comes to technology, we can all take a riff actually from Dr. Andesina, what he did in Nigeria during his days as Minister for Agriculture, where he leveraged technology to accelerate efficiencies. I can see us in Kenya, where mobile banking, fintech solutions, and blockchain technology are already entrenched, using digital financial services to reach unbanked rural farmers in need of fertilizers through quick, cost-effective loan disbursements and repayment via mobile platforms. Lastly, I'm persuaded that we, that is, governments, banks, development institutions, must strengthen our public-private partnerships. We can provide better support to the cooperatives, aggregators, and make financing more attractive through subsidies, incentives, and co-funding arrangements, and ultimately de-risk agricultural investments. Ladies and gentlemen, rather than belabor this issue further, allow me to call us to action, because the time to act is now. If we prioritize innovative, practical financing measures, we will transform agriculture from a struggling sector into a thriving end-to-end business that fuels Africa's growth and prosperity. Let us commit to ensuring that no farmer is left behind due to lack of financing. I am united with you in this cause, and thank you for rededicating yourselves to a stronger, food secure, and prosperous Africa. By the end of the day, let us unsophisticate this very simple way. Let's be as practical as we can. If we are practical, we can reach the small-scale farmer. Asanteni sana. God bless our farmers. God bless Africa.